Hello world of YouTube and welcome to another episode of Redacted, the show where I took a look at records that have a solid foundation, but a spotty execution, and making a smoother listening experience out of it. And this month, we are doing another experiment. We're also going to be tackling a record that I've talked about my blatant issues with multiple times on this channel. And it's a record that other people also have similar issues when it comes to the general pacing of this project. And my goal today is more to make it a smoother listening experience. And it's easily one of the rougher transitions a band has had sonically, shifting from their very angsty roots into something that still retains some aggression but tries to broaden their horizons into some softer, more alternative-leaning territories. I'm talking about the 2007 third album from Linkin Park, Minutes to Midnight.
Wash away what I've done.
Now, like I said, I've reviewed this album twice now, and I basically had the same general complaints with it. I still don't like the pacing of this record. This record is split so dead, with most of it being like intense song, ballad, intense song, ballad, intense song, ballad, and it's such a jarring listening experience. Out of all of Linkin Park's records, I feel like this is the most redactable. And so my big focal point was to clean up that listening experience. However, I'm going to be experimenting a little bit on the show this month by doing so. I'm not going to be removing any tracks. I'm not going to be swapping any B-sides. I'm keeping all the A-sides here that were originally laid on the record. I'm just rearranging the track listing to try and make a much smoother listening experience, to try and make those jarring shifts between the aggressive and softer tendencies lesser so. And while it may still seem like it's jarring at points just looking at the track listing, I'm hoping the flow feels intact. And while this is going to be a one-to-one swap episode, because I focus so heavily on the flow, I'm going to address the big differences or why I specifically swapped as far as like one-to-one comparisons, unlike what I've done in my Weezer and Foo Fighters one-to-one track episodes, at the end of the Redacted, where I would normally talk about songs that I scrapped. But with that being said, all the tracks are here. I just changed up the order. So let's show you the order and talk about why I changed what I changed.
I've given. Stop it out when they bring that chorus in. Leave out all the rest. Leave out all the rest. A black wind took you away from no more sorrow. I think like it doesn't cater to rich and abandoned poor. Like they understand you in the back of the jet. Let me apologize to begin with. Little things give you.
Now, I kept the first two tracks in their place because I feel like Wake and Given Up are probably the best foot this record could have started off on. Wake is this grand, very theatrical, bombastic opener that has a cinematic scope that leads really well into the aggressive punch that Given Up has. And immediately after that is where the album really just starts to flip it track after track after track after track. And so, to alleviate that, I follow that up. I follow Given Up with What I've Done, a track that is a little softer as far as like the overall feel, and it more aims for that bombastic theatrical edge that Wake had, but it still has a little more bite. I didn't want to have this experience that was all A-sides aggressive, all B-sides soft. I still wanted to have some dynamics across the runtime, but I feel like the best way to do that, especially as you'll see as the record goes on, was to just double up on the softer moments and use a track within the transitions to sort of act as a buffer. And what I've done is the first buffer. It's still got edge, and it still has some grand theatrics, and it's a hell of a catchy single. It was the lead single for the project that showed that they would be shifting their sound ever so slightly. So I feel like the comfort of it being the lead single and all that stuff I would use as the first buffer into Shadow of the Day, one of these softer songs on the project that still has sort of a catchy, relatively brighter chorus that's a little bit bigger, and I decided to transition from it into In Pieces, a track that's a little more energetic and has Chester giving his bite a little bit more back into his vocals, even if the track itself is a lot more smooth feeling. It's got a guitar solo, though. It's definitely got elements that see them ramping up the intensity that I then use to carry into Bleed It Out, a track that isn't as aggressive as Given Up, but is still a little more aggressive leaning and has a lot more propulsion in it. So I use the energy of In Pieces to carry you into Bleed It Out, that I then sort of, the wind down from that track, I bleed into what came before it originally on the track listing, Leave Out All the Rest, a track that, again, a little bit more soft leaning, but not quite the softest track on the record. And I use the sort of stadium reaching chorus of Bleed It Out and Leave Out All the Rest as sort of the bridge in there, because I originally had Valentine's Day in its place, but I swapped those two tracks because Valentine's Day, I feel like, was more of a jarring twist from Bleed It Out than Leave Out All the Rest was. Even if the end of Leave Out All the Rest leads into Bleed It Out, you can't really cut that from any track listing. But while they use that in the album proper, I don't think that was enough of a buffer between Leave Out All the Rest and Bleed It Out. But switching from there, I lead into one bombastic chorus of Leave Out All the Rest into another bombastic chorus of Valentine's Day that feels like it's definitely trying to get into more of a grand crescendo than Leave Out All the Rest was. That I transition from that into No More Sorrow, another more aggressive leaning cut that has, again, that sort of bigger scope in its guitar reach. It just feels like it's aiming for higher stratospheres while still getting a little more aggressive. And because No More Sorrow ends in this sharp sort of stop, this very jarring screech, basically, it just has this immediate turn down of everything else, I wanted to use that to carry into the next couple of tracks, which act as gradual crescendos. Hands Held High is easily the most minimal track, and I could see somebody complaining that the shift from No More Sorrow into Hands Held High is so jarring, but I feel like the ending of No More Sorrow is just cut to black. Lends itself really well into the subtle, small beginning of Hands Held High that, again, keeps it in this smallly constructed realm. It builds a little bit, but it keeps it minimal. That in between continues that before leading into what our album originally ended with as well, The Little Things You Give Away. And I wanted to use these three tracks as sort of a gradual building and grandiosity before The Little Things You Give Away just explodes in this different type of sonic climax that the record, I think, originally ended on really well, and is why I kept it where I did, similarly to what I did with the beginning of the record with this at the end. You know, Hands Held High and In Between are easily the most low-key cuts on the record, and I feel like they lend themselves to following themselves up to leading to something more. And so that was my thought process behind it there. Now, like I said, my biggest focus, taking away that jarring cuts. And I feel like this pacing definitely lends itself to doing so, because while there is still that very jarring flip from No More Sorrow into Hands Held High, it's less jarring than it is on the album proper of Hands Held High into No More Sorrow, into Valentine's Day. That's like a really jarring cut from minimal to like building aggression to like crescendo gravitas softness. Same with early on in the record, with Given Up and To Leave Out All the Rest, into Bleed It Out, into Shadow of the Day. That's just such a jarring flip that the whole record just does this gymnastics routine that I feel like even just doing what I did lends itself to a much better listening experience, a smoother listening experience, focusing more on building to crescendos, you know, giving you an ebb and flow experience that's a little less dramatic than just how it rides the whole fucking time throughout the original track listing. And again, I'm happy with this track listing. I feel like it accomplishes what I wanted it to in the original version, but I want to what you think. Do you like this Redacted of this record? Do you think it flows a lot better? Do you like the jarring cuts between on the original version of the project? Let me know in those comments down below. And if you want to listen to it for yourself, it's linked in the description, both a YouTube and a Spotify link. If you do like this particular Redacted, be sure to give it a like. If you want to see more of my music, gaming, and general nerdery content, be sure to subscribe. Special thanks to my patrons. If you want to join the ranks to get early access to content, exclusive content, or to help drive the community, it's linked in the description. I'm going to get out of here, though. Thank you so very much for watching. I have been Vowel Rack. You guys have good days, lives, and situations, and I'll see you another day.